All right, guys, we are back. Welcome to the latest episode in the Flat Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Gill, joined again with Jess and Jordan, bringing you the second podcast this week because we had so much we had to get to. We couldn't do it in one podcast this week. Since we last left you, Florida State has lost again. They may have lost a second time this week. Who knows? We have to take a look at what have going on there in Florida. And we have some news in the Pac-12, or whatever they're called now, the Pac-2. The new AP poll was released. And then we want to get into some more deeper previews for week 2 here. There's dive deeper into some of those matchups that we talked about earlier this week, but also some that we didn't talk about. So let's get started first with Florida State. So Florida State played Boston College Monday night and lost 28-13, and it probably wasn't even that close. Boston College just really owned the line of scrimmage, owned this game from start to finish. I don't even think I never doubted Boston College was going to win this game. It was like up to 14-0 at one point, and they never really looked back. Their quarterback, Castellanos, looking at the game, he thought he had all kinds of numbers. He only threw for 106 yards, ran for 73 more. All their running backs seemed 85 yards for Robachak, another 77 yards for Ward, 28 yards for Richard. So they had some good play there, and then their defense played well against Florida State. DJU did not play well. So what's going on, Florida State, guys? Jess, we'll start with you, man. In your opinion, what is the problem down there in Florida?
I think I was the lowest on Florida State coming into the year out of all of us, but I think it's like I was saying, that they don't have any chemistry. This is a team that was essentially just built through the transfer portal. They lost several of their top players to the draft. This is a team that might get better down the line, but I don't think anybody was expecting them to start the season 0-2, even their biggest detractors. There's clearly something going wrong there. I think it does start with the quarterback. DJ has been not bad, he's been terrible the first 2 weeks. I don't think they move off him just yet, because right now the two guys behind him on the depth chart are Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek. God, that's a name. Both of them are freshmen, with the third stringer Kromenhoek appears to be a true freshman, while Glenn is a redshirt freshman. So it's not like they have experience behind DJ.
You're not winning it. You might as well throw Glenn in and see what he's got at quarterback. If that was me,
maybe let's pull.
He played in a bowl game last year, right? Looked great, but you got to hope that you can develop him and make him into something. But I felt if they really liked him, though, they would have went out and got DJ.
Their next couple of games aren't going to be cakewalks either. Memphis
might win.
Both of these games are at Florida State. You got Memphis and Cal, then at SMU before you host Clemson. If you're gonna start one of those guys, I think you got to do it before Clemson, because even though Clemson did not look good in Week 1 against Georgia, their defense still played well. It was out on the field the whole time because they couldn't get a first down. So you're not gonna want a true freshman, a redshirt freshman to come in and have to. It's like, all right, regular season, your first snaps, Clemson. Like, that's not going to go. So they either got to make the decision in the next 2 weeks, or you got to just ride out with DJ the whole season. Neither option sounds too appealing to me.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I feel like in my opinion, the season's a wash. Go ahead and get your young guys in, and let's just see what you got and play for next year at this point. What do you think, Jordan? Would you give up hope at this point, or would you try to continue with what you're doing?
I feel like give up hope. I just feel like they've lost, and it wasn't like they lost to other ranked opponents. Georgia Tech, Boston College. And I just don't see DJU growing, getting better throughout the season. Just so you know, the crazy part, ESPN Bet still has Florida State winning the Clemson game and has them for the Miami game. So
it's way too far out to trust anything like that. The fact that it's even still like that is boggling to me, but there's no way that stays, right? There's no way.
So I'll go put some money on Miami right now.
Yeah, I would do the Clemson one.
Those odds right now.
Do the Clemson one. It's 3.5 Florida State, minus 3.5 for Florida State. Clemson one.
I don't know if I trust Clemson. Would that be the game they would just be terrible on offense and Florida State finds a way to win?
Because you bet on them.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, hey.
But I just feel like this game, I don't know what it is. They've lost 3 games since they started 13-0 last year. I don't know what's going on there. They ran the ball only 16 times on Monday. I don't know if it's all players. The players are just not, or if it's or if their head coach is just. I feel like all the momentum Florida State had at the end of the season, going into that College Football Playoff, is all gone.
Is it? I saw a stat is it coach 2-10 without Jordan Travis? Was that whole team just because of Jordan Travis, or what do you think there?
I definitely think it was Jordan Travis. He was that team. He was all over. He was everywhere. Throw the ball, run the ball. He was that guy on offense, and they don't have that anymore. They don't have that star that's going to, even if it's not the quarterback, if it's a running back, if it's a receiver that's going to put 100-plus yards a game, they don't have that star.
They don't have that leader either. He was that front and center, and he got them motivated. I think his play got the defensive play harder, offensive play harder. Without that right now, what motivation do the guys have, All right, moving on to a little bit of news here. Pac-2 and the Mountain West Conference have missed their 2025 deadline for scheduling arrangements. So what does that mean? It means that right now, Oregon State, Washington State both have about 4 or 5 games on their schedule for next year. Agreement right now with the Mountain West is over. So if you were these two teams, I always forget about these teams. I don't even see them. I never heard about them. I don't know how they did week 1.
They're the only undefeated conference left. All right, just so you know.
I just now that they're on the conference, they're not even independent, so you just don't really hear about them. What would you guys do if you're Oregon State, Washington State here? I'll start to you, Jordan. What would be your next step? Would you be contacting the Big 12? Would you be trying to start a new Pac-12 with the Mountain West? What are you thinking here?
I feel like joining the Mountain West right now is the smartest option. I think the Big 12. I don't think these conferences are going to be taken. They don't want to take any more on. Big 10 took a bunch of teams on. Big 12. The Big 12 has. I feel like the Mountain West, especially how these teams have really not been the best teams, they're more fitted for that Mountain West Conference. I feel, and if you're the AD and you want college football playoffs, you were in the Pac-12. You were in a Power 5 conference. Drop down to that Group of 5 conference. Drop down and dominate that conference. You have the Power 5 team players, so go dominate the Mountain West for a couple years.
Yep, I agree. But just about you, do you agree?
Yeah, I don't really have much to add there. What else can they really do?
Join Rutgers. 3 people. Rutgers.
Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt, and then we can also add your other team. What's your
East Carolina?
ECU, and they can just make a conference.
That's true. A nice global conference of teams.
It's as spread out as the Big 10 currently is. You see the new Big 10 ads, and it literally just goes coast to coast. You might as well.
Yeah, I might as well at this point. All right.
Conferences don't even mean anything geographically anymore, I feel like.
They don't. I really hope that they eventually go back forever, like basketball, baseball, and all that. I hope they stick to more regional in the future. All right, let's talk about the AP poll. It was released. Let me see. The top 10 here, you have Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Oregon, Penn State, and Missouri. And Michigan in the top 10. The risers and fallers here, you had Texas moving from 4 to 3, Alabama from 5 to 4, Notre Dame from 7 to 5, Oregon drops from 3 to 7, Missouri from 11 to 9, Michigan drops from 9 to 10. Let me see if there's any other big risers. USC dropped 10 spots from 23 to 13. LSU dropped 5 spots, 13 to 18. Yeah, I think those are the biggest ones. And Kansas raised 3 from
Clemson dropped 11. Clemson dropped 11.
Miami went from 19 to 12.
But I guess Florida State probably has the biggest drop.
Clemson dropped 11.
But
yeah,
I think Florida State dropped 20. So
yeah, Florida State's out. So
yeah, they're not in there. So.
I don't think Florida State even got a vote.
They did not this week. They were number 10 last week, so they're out of the top 25. So they're the farthest drop because they dropped all the way out of the top 25. So
They're not even in consideration area.
Yeah, no, they're dead. So yeah, any surprises or issues with this new top 25? Start with you, Jess.
Honestly, no. I actually do like that Oregon, despite my thoughts on them, they were penalized, and it wasn't just like they dropped one spot. No, they dropped a full 4 spots despite winning. So I think that's a good sign for the AP rankings this year. I haven't really had too much to say. USC got their due diligence. Miami got respect. Michigan, another team that didn't look great really at all. They did what they had to do. They had that big Will Johnson ball don't lie moment, but they still were penalized despite winning.
Miami, I missed them, but they did raise 7 from 19 to 12.
From 19 to 12. I don't really have an issue. I would maybe consider putting Notre Dame over Alabama. I think that Notre Dame's win was much more impressive. Obviously, didn't Alabama play like Western Kentucky, I think it was in week 1, and they won 63-0 or something? It was crazy. As bad as Texas A&M, has been, I don't think they've ever been Western Kentucky bad, despite their issues the past few years. Again, respect to Western Kentucky, you went out there, you got paid. But Notre Dame beating A&M, who I think we all think is not going to be terrible this year, just not SEC good, and maybe not up to where they should be with previous recruiting classes. But I think Notre Dame could be moved up to that 4 spot. But really, I don't have anything to say much.
Okay. Jordan, any issues or surprises from you?
No, I think they did a good job, like Jess said, Oregon dropping 4. I think the only reason they didn't put Notre Dame above Alabama is they didn't. I feel like there wasn't a big enough reason to push Notre Dame 3 spots up. Yeah, they beat Texas A&M, but I think they didn't want to push them so far.
Honestly, if you just looked at who the teams played, if you were to just have a blank slate and there was no preseason AP poll, Georgia would be number 1. You have Notre Dame, Miami, Penn State. Those should be the teams at the top or USC should be the teams because they played someone. The other teams, you don't know anything about them yet. Yeah, Alabama beat Western Kentucky, or Ole Miss beat Furman, which Jess Loon this week is in South Carolina. Yeah, but what do we know about these teams? We just know they beat a bad team by a lot, like they're supposed to.
I just want to point one thing out. You guys noticed that Alabama has beaten TJ Finley on 3 different teams?
They did. He just got to get away from them.
LSU, Auburn, and now Western Kentucky.
Oh, my God.
Yep, he gets around. He was in North Texas last year, but he didn't play. I don't think he played Alabama last year.
No.
That's the big issue that I have with a lot of these week 1 matchups. They're just tune-up games for Alabama. Like, it feels, as Tony said, we don't know anything more about Alabama or Ole Miss or Tennessee, really.
And I wonder, will these teams regret not playing? I guess you have two sides of the coin. Will they regret not playing a tough team early, so when they do play a tough team later, it won't be like a shock to the system? Or would you, Brian Kelly, LSU plays every year these tough teams, they always lose. But that's what you have to get your team up for, because you have to be able to at least challenge yourself. And I'm not saying they have to go out like Alabama has to play Georgia week 1. I'm thinking, can they go out and play like a top 25 team, like a Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Arizona, week 1, and just challenge themselves a bit. That way, when they get to these tough games, like when Alabama plays Georgia in a couple weeks, it's not going to be like a shock to the system because they haven't played anybody yet.
I feel like I want the NCAA to adapt and take on the NFL system a little bit, scheduling. The SEC champion is going to play the ACC or the Big Ten champion that, the first or second week of the season. And we're going to see the best teams play each other from each conference, at some point.
Yeah, because here's the thing with non-conference games now. They won't hurt you if you lose. So you shouldn't be scared to play them, because if you lose, you can learn from them, and as long as you win your conference, you're in the playoff. It doesn't matter about your record. That's the main thing.
Again, as long as you don't get blown out, I feel like they're not like if Texas beats Michigan this week, and Texas wins 31-24, or 31-28, something like that. It's a close, tight, respectable game. Is that truly going to be? How much is that going to be held against Michigan later on? If they're if it comes down to them, or a team that Ole Miss, and Ole Miss got blown out in a tough non-conference game. You guys know what I'm saying? If a good loss isn't going to hurt them as much as I feel like a good loss should honestly be better than a couple 63-0 wins over Western Kentucky and Austin, PA later.
Yep. No, I agree. All right, let's move ahead. Week 2 preview. So we have a bunch of games that we can get into here. Let's start first with Marshall at Virginia Tech. I know, Jordan, you were very high on Virginia Tech in our ACC preview. Mitch, to hear your thoughts here in this game, but Virginia Tech is favored by 20 in this game against Marshall. They obviously, last week they had a stunning loss in overtime against Vanderbilt, but I'm sure they're ready to get back. This is it at Virginia Tech. And I think we really had high expectations for Virginia coming in. They return all 11 starters in the offensive side, but I think last week their rushing attack really let them down. They just averaged 2.5 yards a carry against Vanderbilt. But Kyron Jones, which I know you were high on, Jordan, threw the ball pretty well. He had over 300 yards and almost 10 yards per attempt. The offense, they scored a lot by throwing for the air against Vanderbilt. They weren't able to get the victory. If you talk about Marshall, they lost both of their starting cornerbacks from last season, which were both all Sun Belt selections and drafted. So you got to think that the defense may be a little susceptible for them. They only returned 3 starters in the front 7. So you got to think that if Virginia Tech can get their running game going against that, that's where they get their success for this game. But I'll leave up to you guys. What do you think is going to happen here? Marshall at Virginia Tech. We'll start with you, Jordan, and your beloved Virginia Tech team for this year.
I definitely think Virginia Tech's going to win this game. They already were down. They had the diversity. They had to come back. Adversity in this Vanderbilt game. They were down 17-3 at halftime, and they came back to take the lead and then go into overtime tied 27-27. I think Vanderbilt is a scrappy team that if you're down the stretch close with them, that you should be praying, because they seem like a team that could win that game no matter what. They play hard, and I think Virginia Tech, it showed a lot that they came back being down by 2 touchdowns, and I think, like you said, getting that run game going and that defense to pick it up a little bit. But I just think that Virginia Tech's just a better team than Marshall, and then they're going to easily cover that minus that 20-point spread.
All right. Jess, where are you going at with this game?
Yeah, I agree with Jordan. I think Virginia Tech's going to bounce back this week. They probably should have won the Vanderbilt game. They were sleepwalking, were still able to overcome that in the second half. And sadly for them, they lost in overtime. I think this is going to be their bounce back game. I think they'll win handedly.
All right. I tend to agree. It's at Virginia Tech. I feel like, maybe just at Marshall, maybe it'd be a little closer, and I might take the points here. But no, I think Virginia Tech will cover and win this game pretty easy. I think they'll be able to run the ball on Marshall's defense here because they lost so much. And I just see this one being a nice, easy one for Virginia Tech to get their season going here in week 2. All right. We talked a little bit about this one earlier, but Texas and Michigan, game of the week, College Game Day will be there. Texas is favored by 6.5 points. Obviously, I think we talked in the last podcast, Texas is pretty much perfect against Colorado State on Saturday. Obviously, it's going to face a much more significant defense on Saturday. Obviously, Quinn Ewers did his thing, and I think he was able to throw the ball around. I think what I saw a little bit of concern, though, is he still, to me, he is good against, what will he do against a really top-level defense? Because to me, he seemed like last year, just looking at it, he was a very average passer and like the non-play action attempts last season, and I just feel like he's going to have to do something against this defense here to score a lot like they did last week. And I'm a little concerned. They lost a couple running backs before the season. Those running backs get wore down. Will they have enough firepower here to wear down Michigan? I obviously was high on Michigan before last week, and then this past week I picked Texas to win. I looked at the tape again against Fresno State, and I felt like they were really vanilla, almost do you think they were a little vanilla on purpose to get ready for this Texas game? I'm not saying they did that because they could have been vanilla because they weren't firing on cylinders. But I have a feeling Michigan's going to have some things up their sleeve that they did not show last week, and this could be a better game than some people are saying. So, just to start you. Do you think this will be a close game, or do you have Texas just kind of blowing them out?
I think this is going to be a close game. I think Texas is going to win, but Michigan has the talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, with the likes of Mason Graham, Will Johnson, and Kenneth Grant. You got Graham and Grant that are going to be really pushing things on the trenches there, and Will Johnson is one of, if not the best corners in college football. For my opinion, it's between him, Benjamin Morrison?
Yeah.
Benjamin Morrison, the best.
Morrison and Travis Hunter. But I think for a lot of people, just from physical standpoint, Johnson is like 6'2", 200 or something like that. He's got the length, he's got the size, speed, he's got everything. We're not going to get into that.
He's number two. Yep, number two quarterback. I agree.
Defensive personnel to match up with Texas. Now, Texas they've got some dogs in the trenches too, starting with the guy who I think a lot of people view as possibly the best tackle in college football, in Kelvin Banks. So both teams have plenty of NFL level talent. Quinn Ewers it's going to come down to Quinn Ewers. Wow, big surprise, it comes down to the quarterback. But I think running back, despite the loss of CJ Baxter, is going to be an easier thing for teams to replace in today's day and age with how football is played. And Texas, it's not like the guys behind Baxter were scrubs or anything. They're still 3, 4, 5-star guys. Between all of that, I think that with the weapons Texas just has, and Ewers being, in my opinion, far and away the better quarterback in this matchup, the trenches are going to even themselves out, and Ewers is going to have 1 or 2 plays over the course of this game that just turn the tide, and I think that's going to be what puts Texas over the top by about 10. Not much, but I think they'll win this game. They'll be up 28-21, looking to put this game away. They'll drive down, get into field goal range, kick that field goal, and Michigan will have 3 minutes left and they won't be able to get down the field. Something like that, where it's going to be closer than I think the score will indicate.
All right, Jordan?
I got Texas on this one. I think the score, like Jess said, the score is going to be closer. I just don't know if I see enough out of that Michigan offense. Warren, 15 for 25 last week, 118 yards through the air. He threw 1 touchdown and 1 interception, but 87 of those yards were to their tight end, Loveland. So if they can stop him, I feel, and I didn't see enough from Michigan's run game last week to really know that their run game is back. Their run game is the same. I think it's going to be a lot closer, but I definitely feel like down the stretch, Texas's offense is going to figure it out and put up more points than you'd think. I think it's going to be later in the game. I just think Texas's offense with Quinn Ewers, everyone, they got the star power. I just think Michigan doesn't have that star power on offense. So I'm going to get Texas. I think Texas definitely covers that 6.5, 7.5 spread. Tony is probably going to say Michigan, but
I am, and I thought about it since I picked Texas to win earlier this week. Watching the film, I feel like Michigan was really good against the run against Fresno State. They held with 9 rushing yards in total. I'm not saying Fresno State is a world beater or anything, but I feel like their defense is going to really show up against Texas, shut down the running team attack that they do have, and really play man against the rest of the offense against Texas. And I think that's going to try to put Quinn Ewers in some difficult situations, which I think will throw a couple picks, make this a closer game. And it should be Michigan pulls it off at the big house, by the way. This is at Michigan. I just think Michigan's going to find a way to win this game.
It would be different if it wasn't at noon. But we're talking about noon on this Big Ten Fox kickoff, baby.
Yeah, it would be at night. It would be different. Yeah, I know.
Also, that 9 yards, did come off of three sacks for negative 30 yards.
Hey, listen,
So
those
just-
sacks are coming this week too, so don't let that fool you.
Against Kelvin Banks.
Yes, that defensive. We talked about it in the preseason. The defensive line of Michigan is the same defensive line that was last year that won the title. Put some respect on their name. They did win the national title last year.
All right, I'll put respect on myself.
You do that, and then I'm going to play this clip when I actually get one upset right. At least I'm going on a line here.
He's going to pick an upset every week, everybody, and it's going to be...
I'm not. I just know this is going to happen. I know it's going to happen.
You said that with West Virginia as well, so...
That should happen. They let me down. They're off my list, Christmas card list. All right, let's move on here. Arkansas at Oklahoma State. Obviously, Oklahoma State's coming off a 44-20 win over South Dakota State last week. They have Ollie Gordon, veteran quarterback Alan Bowman, who obviously leading the way. Alan Bowman, good game last week, 267 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ollie Gordon continued his game last week, another good rushing attack there. Arkansas was coming to build up their momentum from last week, 70-0 victory over Arkansas Pine Bluff, where I really liked what I saw on Boise State transfer quarterback Talon Green. He had 229 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, had some rushing yards in there as well. I really like his game, elite stat game against Arkansas Pine Bluff. So I don't know if he's going to be able to translate that over to Oklahoma State, but it'd be interesting to see if he is. One thing I did find interesting with this offense is they have, obviously, Bobby Petrino as the new offensive coordinator, obviously the famous coach from Arkansas before he had all his drama with dating an employee there and all that, but he is a good offensive mind, and I think he might find some different ways to use Talon Green. So this is an interesting matchup. Interesting to get you guys' pick on this one. So start you, Jess. Who do you got winning this one, Oklahoma State and Arkansas?
I think I'm going with Oklahoma State. Again, Arkansas looked great in week 1, but who were they playing? They were playing no one, essentially. I didn't learn anything about Arkansas. I wasn't blown away by anything Arkansas did. I think maybe Arkansas could be a better team this year than initially expected, but I don't see them as being some top contender type. If I had to pick an upset this week, I think I would lean Arkansas because Oklahoma State still struggled with the quarterback position. They did not impress me much at all in their week 1 performance. But I think I'm still going to give Oklahoma State the edge. I think they are the more talented team. It's at Oklahoma State. I just think a couple of things are going to bounce their way, but I think, what's the spread at here? 8.5? I wouldn't be shocked if Arkansas covered.
All right, Jordan, who you got, man?
I'm picking this upset. Give me Arkansas. I can never get behind Oklahoma State because I can never trust their quarterback. And I'm at that point again where I can't trust their quarterback. Honestly, their defense didn't look that great. Yeah, they played South Dakota State, who has a good team altogether. But Bowman didn't. He played all right this game, but they did play a smaller team. It's like Arkansas. Arkansas played a smaller team. The biggest thing I feel like is going to be the test for Arkansas, and I think the biggest thing that's going to carry Oklahoma State is Gordon. 126 yards, 3 touchdowns. He put the team on his back, and I think he's going to continue to put the team on the back. So it's going to be super close. I think it's going to be a field goal or a touchdown, but I'm going to pick Arkansas. I just think they might have the more firepower, explosive offense than Oklahoma State. I don't think Oklahoma State has ever had that explosive offense in the last couple of years. So I got Arkansas.
Give me Arkansas. I think that SEC defense is going to slow down at Oklahoma State. Rushing attack a bit. I'm not saying Ollie Gordon's not going to get his. He'll get his. But I really like Talon Green. I like what Bobby Petrino was able to do with him. That just seems like a really match made in heaven there with the coordinator and the quarterback. So I think they'll score enough here and they'll be able to play enough solid defense. I actually think Sam Pittman this year is coaching for his life because he'll be fired if he does not have a good season. I think of this as what West Virginia was in last year. Everybody thought they were going to have a terrible season. They ended up 9-4. I can see something very similar happen here with Arkansas. So I think this is a way to do that, is to win this game. So give me Arkansas to win this game. All right, next up we have Kansas State at Tulane. So Tulane's first-year head coach John Summerall named redshirt freshman Darian Massa as the starter over veteran Kate Horton and Oregon transfer Ty Thomas. Is a little bit of a surprise move there. And Massa, I don't even know. I'm probably butchering your name, man. I'm really sorry. Mensah, maybe. I don't know. And then impressed in week 1 win over Louisiana. Obviously has a much tougher test here against Kansas State. Obviously last week Kansas State crushed UT Martin 41-6 in their opener. Avery Johnson, everybody was hyping him up. I thought he could have done more. He reminded me of Leonard with his ability, but he was playing a lot worse team, so he went 14-21 for 153 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception, 37 yards rushing on 3 carries. I just wasn't impressed with the stat line. I know maybe they're holding it back for an eventual bigger opponent, but I don't know. I expected more from him because he ran off Will Howard apparently, and now I expected more of a bigger stat line here. Obviously, their star there is the running back DJ Gibbons, who rushed for 124 yards in week 1, and so they hope that he will continue to do that as he did last year. So who do you guys have winning this one, Kansas State or Tulane? We'll start with you, Jordan.
All right, I'm gonna do it. Give me that upset. Give me that upset. I think Tulane has the better quarterback.
Now you're jumping off a hill. I can't go up that hill with you.
You've gone up many hills that you've.
Mine are very small hills.
No, they have
hills.
been. I'm putting one out there.
All right, there you go.
I think this is going to be a lot closer than expected. I just think the quarterback is going to be where it is, and I think Johnson is not that quarterback this year. He's not ready to be that quarterback this year. I think they have more explosiveness passing for Tulane. They put up those numbers. I just think Tulane. Not a lot to say on this, man. Just give me Tulane, all right? Don't shake your head at me, Tony, because you're always wrong with these upsets.
I'm usually right. I'm like about 50%.
No, you're like 1 for 60.
Because I go on a limb. I try.
I'm trying right here. Don't look at me.
Let me see. They're favored by 20. Let's go ahead and take the easy road.
Look at me. I'm picking Tulane on this one, man.
All right, I'm glad. I'm happy to see it. That's a terrible pick, but I'm glad you were able to go on a limb.
You're probably going to pick Baylor. Relax, all right?
Jess, who you got?
I'm taking Tulane.
Oh, my Lord. I can't wait. At least I won't be on a limb in this one. So you guys will be out there and having to apologize on Twitter about this.
The quarterback matchup, I think that it's at Tulane is going to play in their favor. I think this isn't even really that big of an upset pick. It's plus 10. It's a little bit more than Arkansas and Oklahoma State. I know I just said if I had to pick one, I would have taken Arkansas over Oklahoma State, but I think the fact that I thought this game was reversed, I thought it was at Kansas State. If it is at Tulane, and I think that's going to play in the Green Wave's favor. The quarterback matchup I like. Again, this is one of those where if you were struggling against UT Martin through the air, I think Tulane's just got a lot better of a defense. I think Tulane wins this game by 3.
Kansas State by 15, 20, 30 points, whatever. They're just a much better team, and they'll be much more focused on this game than they were week 1 when they were just getting started. I don't see how you guys could beat that. Kansas State is going to probably be one of the teams playing for the playoffs, so I don't see how you guys go that route. But hey, everybody has their own pick. Next up, Baylor at Utah. Baylor's coming off a huge win over Tarleton State, whoever that is. I don't know what state that is, Jess, so don't ask me about that one. In their season opener, and the next couple weeks they take on Air Force Colorado, so they have some opportunities here to do some good things. DeQuan Finn is the new quarterback there. He's looking pretty decent so far. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 192 yards. So he has some hits or misses, but overall looked pretty good in the first week. Utah is coming off a shutout win over Southern Utah, and they're looking to start 2-0 for the 9th time in the last 12 years. Cam Rising, my man, is coming back, completing 66% of his passes for 254 yards, 5 touchdowns last week. But then the rest of the teams follow suit. The ground game is averaging 220 yards a game. It's one game, so they had 220 yards last week. And then, so I like the running backs. I like the team. I like the defense. Before you guys even pick, I'm not picking Baylor for sure. This is my lock of the week. Utah destroys Baylor. Go ahead, guys. Who do you got?
I got Utah. Cam Rising is going to put up the numbers. He's back, baby. Utah.
Yeah, he's my Heisman dark horse, so go ahead, Jess.
First of all, Tony, everybody knows Tarleton is in Texas. Don't come at me like that.
You should have known Furman's a little closer to where you went to school. I'm just saying.
I don't want to hear it. It's in Texas. It is located at 1333 West Washington Street.
He looked it up.
76401.
Of course,
that's
obviously.
just common knowledge.
Common
If you
knowledge,
watch-
yes.
Common knowledge.
Everyone watching the video, everyone notice Jess look super hard into his computer.
Yeah, he did not have a photographic memory. He does not
No,
remember.
I did not. I did, in fact, have to Google that one. I had never even heard of Tarleton State.
I just don't try
But
anymore.
that doesn't change the fact that, Utah's going to win this one. Cam Rising's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. They're going to do what they need to do, and Utah's going to win this game handedly.
All right. Let's move ahead to Iowa State. Iowa, always an interesting matchup to start the year with these two teams. Iowa has offense now. How good is Iowa State? A lot of open questions in this one. Iowa State, if you remember last year, their quarterback Beck was early in his career as a starter, and he ended up struggling most of the game against Iowa last year, only throwing for 203 yards and interception. Obviously, tough place to play early, Iowa. He also was hurt by 4 drops, so he's hoping to improve that this year. But he's obviously, since that game, he's been picking things up and playing a lot better. So they have a lot of hope that he's going to take them to the next level there. And they're coming in after a victory last week. Cade McNamara is back for another season, and they scored 40 points, as we talked about, and they might have an offense. I'm interested to see, do you trust the defense, Iowa, versus this potentially decent offense of Iowa State, or do you trust the new Iowa offense to take this game over? Jordan, we'll start with you. Who you got, Iowa State?
I got Iowa. I think their quarterback actually.
And it's at Iowa.
Yeah,
Probably
at
helps.
Iowa, it's not an easy place to play in general. Awake,
You don't just go to Iowa and win. So
no, yeah, and their defense looks good. Iowa's defense is always good, but they have something they haven't had in a while, and it's an offense. They can throw the ball. Yep. The biggest thing though is I think it's going to be a lot closer, but I think that defensive Iowa is going to be able to contain that Iowa State offense, and the quarterbacks Cade and Rico. Yeah, Rico. They were really similar, besides Cade having one more touchdown. But also, Iowa's head coach Kurt Ferentz is back after one game suspension.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's just going to make Iowa want it more. And I think that defense, I don't think Iowa State's going to be able to score like they did last week on that Big Ten Iowa defense. Iowa.
All right. Jess, you agree?
Iowa State is 2-8 in their last 10 matchups against Iowa, and that was when Iowa didn't have an offense. But even then, Iowa was able to put up 20, 27, 18. They would win games. Some games they'd win 13-3. There was one game that went 44-41 or 42-3, 31. So Iowa is able to complement. We know Iowa's going to have a good defense, and if they're able to complement that with a good offense, which I think another good test here, just on I perceive to be a lesser team. Let's see if this offense can replicate things. Maybe not. It's not going to be as great as it looked last week, but if they have a pulse on offense to complement how good I think their defense can be, then this is going to be a good season for Iowa, and I think that we'll start really getting a feel for them as we do with most teams in week 2 here, and I think we're going to see that. I think Iowa can be quite good this year, and I think they're going to beat Iowa State probably by 10-17, somewhere in that range.
All right, I agree. I think Iowa's playing at home. I think the offense will help with it, on top of the already good defense. So I give me Iowa 14 to 21 points in this one as well. All right, next up we have I think a sneaky good contest. Kansas at Illinois could be the match of the week. I think they're very similar matched teams. Coming in this one, it looks like Kansas is favored by 6.5. Last week, Kansas Jayhawks beat Lindenwood. Tough matchup. Ended up winning that one with Jalen Daniels completing 60% of his passes for 148 yards, touchdown, interception. Their ground game had 331 yards. They only allowed 3 points, so only 202 yards. So decent performance again against Lindenwood. So what does that tell you? But I know last year that Jalen Daniels always looked really good when he had a chance to play and wasn't injured. So that's got to give you hope as a Kansas Jayhawk. As far as Illinois, they shut out Eastern Illinois. They had Luke Meyer, the quarterback, had completed almost 80% of his passes for 213 yards, 4 touchdowns. I had over 244 yards rushing. So, again, very similar matched teams here. Both play pretty good defense. Both run the ball very well. Both quarterbacks are probably not going to be as accurate as you would like or throwing 300 to 400 yards, but they'll do the job. So, with that being said, though, so do you, Jess, who do you think is going to win this one, Kansas or Illinois?
I think it'll be Kansas. I like Jalen Daniels. I think he's got a lot of promise. I think he's going to be an interesting prospect come draft time in the next year or two whenever he's allowed to declare. I think his main issue has been health, and if he can stay healthy, I think Kansas can be a pretty good team. I know it's at Illinois, but I just think Kansas is the better team overall. I don't really have much to say. There's no super in-depth reasoning here for it. Kansas, I just think, is the better team. They're going to go. They're going to do their bit. They're going to do what they need to do. They're going to walk away with a win, just like they did against Lindenwood, which is located in, where
Kansas?
was it? Yes,
Missouri.
St. Charles, Missouri.
Yeah, makes
Totally
sense.
knew
St.
that.
Charles, Missouri
Yeah.
is outside of St. Louis, just so you guys know.
Ah,
Very
there
good.
you go. Now,
Oh,
folks.
this is turning into a geography.
And knowing's half the battle,
Yes.
folks.
Yep.
Thank you, G.I. Joe.
You taught us well. All right. Next up, we have one of the better matchups of the week, Tennessee at North Carolina State. We talked a little bit about the last podcast, so we won't spend as much time on this one, but Tennessee is favored by 4.5 points, which is surprising me because it's at North Carolina State. But obviously, both teams did well last week, relatively. Tennessee did really well. North Carolina State took a half to get going, but ended up winning. Tennessee blew out Chattanooga, while it took almost 3.5 quarters for North Carolina State to put away Western Carolina. So, again, we talked a little bit about Grayson McCall last week. He wasn't great in the opener, but he started coming around by the end, and he's really just getting used to his receiving room, his offense, and so you got to think he'll be better in this game. We haven't seen the quarterback of Tennessee have a play against a competitive foe yet, so this will be interesting to see how he does here. I'm just interested in this matchup. I mean, it's the first big game they're playing. They probably both put a little vanilla last week, so I'm interested to see what they do. It's at North Carolina State, which is a tougher place to play. You never know what the weather is going to be like this time of year. So with that being said, Jordan, who do you got, Tennessee or North Carolina State?
This is probably the toughest one to pick out of the whole week, and I just can't. I don't know if I can pick an upset on this one. All right, give me it. I'm gonna pick NC State at home. Grayson McCall is gonna pull it out, pick it up, and he's going to have a better game. I think the teams are super close and everything, but I just think with Nico's first big game being at NC State, and like you said, Tony, the weather, you don't know what it's going to be like. With Jordan Waters coming from Duke.
Yep.
Yeah, he already knows what the weather is going to be like in that area. He's going to be able to run and put up the numbers like he did last week with 123 yards. I just think NC State is going to pick it up from last week. Their offense is going to pick it up, and that defense is going to be able to control a little bit more of the game. And Nico is just going to – he's young. If it was next year talking about this game, I think I would be on Tennessee side. But with him being fresh, starting, not really getting in this atmosphere, I got NC State.
Jess, who do you got?
I got Tennessee. I think that this is going to be a very interesting game to see from Nico Lama.
Don't even try.
That's why we just say Nico
tried.
here.
I don't think I succeeded. But Nico, I think, is one of the most interesting quarterbacks in the country.
Not just because of his name.
Not just because of his name. But he was this really highly touted guy, and I think if he hits the way that I think a lot of people expect him to, we're going to be looking more at 2022 Tennessee than 2023 Tennessee. And that's going to be very interesting with how he shapes out. Because Tennessee still has who I think might be the best player, regardless of position, in the country right now, or at the very least for this upcoming draft, in James Pierce Jr. And so they could have potentially two game changers, one on each side of the ball. And I think that's going to be too much for NC State here. I think I have confidence in Nico. I've heard a lot of good things. A lot of scouts have talked him up. He's viewed very highly. And again, it was just against Chattanooga, but being that's really all we've got other than the Orange Bowl, where a lot of players on both sides weren't playing. That's all the tape we've got on him, and I like what I've seen so far. I'm going to trust that. I'm going to trust Tennessee. I think Tennessee goes into NC State and gets the win.
All right, good call. I am picking NC State. I really like Concepcion, their receiver. Waters, the running back, as you mentioned, Jordan. And then I like their secondary receiver, Noah Rogers. He was really highly recruited out of high school. He went to Ohio State for a year, transferred in the offseason to North Carolina State. And I think he has a lot of potential to break out in this game because they're going to obviously, I think, Concepcion is the talented one, and so I think Tennessee's going to do everything it can to shut him down, which will open it up for Noah Rogers to potentially have a breakout game here with him and Grayson McCall, be able to open his offense up a little bit. With North Carolina State's defense always being pretty good, I feel like this game will be a little bit of a slugfest. I think they'll end up winning because it's at home. Give me North Carolina State. All right, next up we have Boise State, Oregon. I would say Boise State last week took on the Georgia Southern Eagles. In that matchup, they won 56-45. So great offensive showing, not as great defensive showing. Obviously, their quarterback did pretty well, 280 yards and a touchdown. We talked about Anson Genti last time, but he's had a career day at 267 yards and 6 scores. We talked about Oregon this past podcast as well, where they played Idaho and won 24-14. This was sloppy, but Dylan Gabriel had good numbers. Again, those popcorn muscles, empty calories showing up there, as I mentioned earlier. So again, interesting matchup, but this is at Oregon. I think Oregon is favored by 19.5. If you give me the points, I'll take them, but I think Boise State can score a lot. I just don't think they'll have the defense here to score, so I would pick Oregon ultimately. Jordan, who you got in this one, Oregon or Boise State?
I got Oregon, and it's pretty easy to pick this one. Like you said, it was at Boise State. I would pick Boise State, but that game the Oregon game was a lot closer in score than stats. They only allowed 49 rushing yards for Idaho. Yeah, it's Idaho, but still, I think Oregon's going to be able to stop Boise State's run game at least a little bit, and I think Oregon's going to pull away and win by 3 touchdowns just because Boise State doesn't have that defense. I think Oregon has a better defense and is going to be able to stop them more often than Boise State is going to be able to stop Oregon. So give me Oregon. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to put up huge numbers and pull away more on Heisman.
All right. Jess, you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think Oregon's going to run away with this one. I think they had some issues week 1. Got to iron things out, figure things out. First real competition. It was not a good look. We've lambasted teams for playing not good competition here and just blowing them out of the water, but Oregon didn't even do that. But at the end of the day, they got the win. They're moving on. They are one of the most talented teams in the country. I like the quarterback situation. I think they're going to figure things out. I think they win this one comfortably.
All right. Good pick there. And our last one, Colorado and Nebraska should be an interesting one. Nebraska is favored this one set by 7.5 points. So last week, obviously, Colorado had a tough game against North Dakota State, which, hey, North Dakota State always plays well against whoever they play against, so I don't think there's no shame in that. But I don't know if we saw enough improvement from Colorado from last year to this year to say, okay, they're going to be able to go on a little bit of a run this year. But their offense still looks good with Sure Sanders going for 445 yards and 4 touchdowns. Defense still, to me, looks pretty shaky. Nebraska, obviously, started true freshman Dylan Raiola. We talked about him quite a bit on the podcast where he was a high school recruit as he bounced from Ohio State to Georgia then to Nebraska finally. He was impressive at his first collegiate start. He did 19-27 for 238 yards, 2 scores against a decent UTEP team, and they won 40-7 in week 1. So this one will be a little different, a little more pressure, a little more eyes on the game for a new quarterback for Nebraska, but a much better defense for Nebraska versus a much higher level offense for Colorado and not as good of a defense. And again, this one is at Nebraska. The house will probably be packed because people are excited to see the true freshmen play. Yep, night game. It's going to be a tough place to play. So, Jess, who do you got in this one?
I'm going with Nebraska. I think that Colorado is still essentially a 3-man show with Shedeur, Travis Hunter, and Horn on offense. And then, obviously, Hunter plays both ways. But I think Nebraska, as a team, they were a lot better than I think their record indicated last year. I mentioned this in the preview pod, but they had, I think it was like 6 games that they lost or something that were all by single score games, some of which were even just 3-point games. And in those losses, they committed 16 turnovers, 14 of which were all by the quarterback. Raiola looked good. I think Colorado's defense isn't going to really put up much resistance, so I think Raiola is going to be able to once again not do as he pleases. He's going to be more comfortable than Colorado would like him to be. And I think that's going to allow Nebraska to operate and go do what they need to do. I don't know about 7.5. I think the 3 best players still might be on Colorado, but I think Nebraska is going to win by, let's say, 5.
Okay. Jordan, what about you?
It's a weird number for football. You get what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I have Nebraska. I think offensively, they're a little more diverse. Colorado is a one-trick pony. Let's throw the ball 500 times, and I don't know what it is, but Shedeur Sanders just puts up numbers because they can't run the ball. So they're going to pass the ball every play. And I think Nebraska, as long as if Nebraska's defense can hold their 2 receivers and just get to the quarterback, I think this game is going to be a bad game for Nebraska or Colorado. And I just don't think Colorado's defense, as long as you don't throw it towards Travis Hunter, you're fine. And so I think they cover the spread, especially in Nebraska. Night game, rival game. It's gonna be rough for Colorado offensively and defensively because they did not change anything there. Honestly, I think they should have lost last weekend, but that's just me. So give me Nebraska covering the spread. I think they win by 10 to 14 points.
All right, I tend to agree. I think the defense of Nebraska is going to be the key. While I will think Colorado will be able to score some points, there's going to be some drives that Nebraska is able to stop where I don't know if that Colorado defense is going to be able to slow down some of Nebraska's play. So I do think it'll be a little bit of a closer game, but Nebraska at night with the hype around Dylan Raiola, I'm interested to see if they can get the victory. Either team that wins this is going to be 2-0, looking at a decent start to their season. So it's going to be both have a lot to play for in this one. So interested to see who wins. All right, guys, that wraps up our second podcast of this week. As always, follow us on X at In the Flat Pod for all of our latest podcasts, links to our website, and everything else. Again, it's In the Flat Pod on X. And we'll talk to you again soon to talk about week 2. Hopefully some good contests this week. But till then, see you later. Bye.